The ballroom at Serene Heights Corporate Club shimmered beneath chandeliers that looked like falling stars frozen in glass. Every table was wrapped in ivory linen, every chair tied with gold satin bows. A slideshow of my father's achievements glowed across a giant screen photographs, spanning 4 decades at Allied Crest Industries. Promotions, handshakes, awards, not a single picture of me. I stood near the back, fingers curled around the strap of my clutch, trying to make myself smaller. My navy dress was simple, carefully chosen, so no one could accuse me of trying to outshine the occasion. That accusation had followed me my whole life. On stage, my father laughed with his colleagues, pride radiating from him like heat. Beside him stood Samir, my older brother, the family's trophy. His charcoal suit fit perfectly, just like his life seemed to. Samir, who joined a prestigious firm straight out of university. Samir, who carried our father's approval like a medal pinned to his chest. The MC tapped the microphone. Tonight we honor a man of integrity, discipline, and legacy. A man whose family must be incredibly proud. My mother's smile stretched wide and practiced. She clasped her pearls and leaned toward one of her friends. "We are proud," she said warmly. Dad adjusted his tie and began his speech. "I owe everything to my wife," he said first. Applause filled the room. Her sacrifices made my career possible. More applause. "And my son, Samir," he continued, placing a firm hand on my brother's shoulder. "He carries forward our values, our name. Cheers." I waited. I had spent years waiting for moments like this. "And my daughter." He paused just long enough for hope to bloom painfully in my chest. "Well, she's always chosen her own direction." A few polite chuckles drifted across the tables. My mother added, not quietly enough, "She's not really worth mentioning professionally." The words were soft, almost casual, but they struck like glass shattering inside me. Not worth mentioning. I felt my throat tighten, but I refused to let tears fall, not here, not tonight. I had learned long ago that crying only confirmed their quiet judgments. What none of them knew, what no one in that glittering room suspected, was that I hadn't come seeking acknowledgement. I had come prepared. As the applause faded and the CEO stepped toward the podium holding a slim black folder, a different kind of anticipation began to stir inside me. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding the sharpest truth. And tonight that truth had my name on it. 3 months before the retirement ceremony, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by spreadsheets glowing against the dark. The city outside buzzed with life, but my world was narrowed to numbers, clauses, and patterns that didn't make sense. I hadn't intended to look into Allied Crest Industries at all. My independent consulting firm, small, discreet, built from years of quiet resilience, had been hired to review procurement processes for a third-party vendor. It was routine work, until it wasn't. Hidden beneath layers of ordinary invoices was a pattern, inflated supply costs, recurring rounding anomalies, a contract extension clause that would quietly renew at nearly double the current rate. Individually, the details looked harmless. Together, they formed something dangerous, a slow bleed. I ran the numbers again, then again. If signed as scheduled, the agreement would cost the company millions over 5 years. It wasn't dramatic fraud, it was worse. It was negligence masked as trust. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding not from fear, but from clarity. My father had always said I lacked corporate instinct, that I was too analytical, too independent, too unwilling to play the game, yet here I was, seeing what seasoned executives had missed. For a moment, I considered calling him. I imagined his response. "Are you sure you're reading that correctly? You don't understand internal politics. Leave it to professionals." So instead, I prepared a formal risk assessment report, 43 pages of data models, projections, and corrective strategies. I included a digital compliance framework that could prevent similar oversights in the future, but I did not sign it as Ayesha Karim. I sent it under my firm's registered name and requested a confidential meeting with the CEO, Mr. Rahman. When I stepped into his office days later, he studied me carefully. He had already read the file. "You're Karim's daughter," he said, not as a question. Yes, he leaned back in his chair, Does he know about this? No. And why not? I held his gaze. Because if I'm right, the company benefits, and if I'm wrong, I don't want it to reflect on him. Silence stretched between us. You've outlined savings of nearly 18% over 5 years. He finally said, "That's not minor. It's necessary," I replied. Over the next weeks, I worked quietly with the executive team. Contracts were renegotiated, safeguards implemented. The dangerous clause was dissolved before it could activate. No one in my family knew. At dinner, my father spoke proudly about preparations for his retirement. Samir discussed his own promotion. My mother praised stability and reputation. And I nodded, carrying a secret that could either protect my father's legacy or redefine it. I didn't need applause, but I did need the truth to exist, and soon it would. The ballroom felt smaller when Mr. Rahman stepped back to the microphone, the black folder steady in his hands. Conversations faded into whispers. Crystal glasses hovered midair. My father stood beside him, still glowing from the applause of his farewell speech, unaware that the ground beneath his legacy was about to shift. At Allied Crest Industries, Mr. Rahman began, "We value loyalty, but we value foresight even more." He opened the folder slowly. "This report," he continued, "was submitted to my office 3 months ago. It identified a procurement oversight that would have cost this company 22 million rupees over 5 years. The number rippled through the room like a shockwave. My father's smile faltered. Samir straightened, confusion clouding his face. My mother's fingers tightened around her clutch. Mr. Rahman looked up from the pages. What impressed me most wasn't just the financial projection. It was the precision, the integrity, and the fact that the author requested no public recognition. He paused, letting the silence stretch. "Miss Ayesha Karim, please join me." For a heartbeat, I couldn't move. Every memory of being dismissed, corrected, compared, it all pressed against my ribs. But this time, I didn't shrink. I walked forward. The marble floor echoed beneath my heels, each step louder than the last. Eyes followed me, colleagues, family, friends, executives who had known me only as Karim's daughter. Mr. Rahman handed me the folder. "Your audit saved this company from a long-term financial drain," he said clearly, "and your digital compliance model is now being implemented across all departments." The projector screen flickered to life behind us. My name appeared in bold lettering, followed by charts and projections, evidence of months of quiet work. Gasps gave way to applause, not polite applause, real applause. I turned slightly, just enough to see my father. He looked as though someone had rewritten a story he thought he knew by heart. His pride, so confidently displayed minutes ago, now seemed uncertain. "You never mentioned this," he said under his breath when I stepped closer. "You never asked." I replied softly. It wasn't anger that colored my voice. It was fact. Mr. Rahman continued, addressing the audience. "It is rare to see talent paired with humility. Miss Karim chose the company's well-being over personal credit." The applause swelled again. Samir avoided my eyes. My mother looked stunned, as though the version of me she carried in her mind no longer fit reality. For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing in someone else's shadow. I wasn't fighting for acknowledgement. I was undeniable, and as the folder rested in my hands, I realized something powerful. The sweetest revenge isn't destruction. It's revelation. The applause did not fade quickly that night. It lingered, like a shift in the air no one could ignore. As the ceremony continued at Serene Heights Corporate Club, conversations changed direction. Executives who once greeted me with polite disinterest now approached with curiosity and respect. A few even asked for my card. I handed it to them calmly, as if this had always been my place. Across the room, my father stood unusually still. For a man who had commanded meetings for decades at Allied Crest Industries, silence did not suit him. Yet tonight, silence surrounded him, not humiliating, not cruel, but reflective. When most of the guests had moved toward the buffet tables, he finally walked toward me. Up close, he looked older than he had on stage, not weaker, just human. "You should have told me," he said quietly. There was no accusation in his voice now, only something unfamiliar, regret. I tried, I answered. For years, he absorbed that without defense, The absence of an argument felt more powerful than any apology rehearsed for pride's sake. "I thought you needed guidance," he admitted after a moment. "I didn't realize you had already built your own foundation." For the first time, he wasn't speaking as a father correcting a child. He was speaking as one professional to another. That shift was everything. My mother approached next, her expression carefully composed. "We didn't know," she said softly, almost to herself. I offered a small smile. "You never asked. It wasn't said to wound." It was simply truth. Later that week, an internal company bulletin formally credited me for the strategic intervention. Mr. Rahman extended an offer for a permanent executive advisory position. I accepted, but on my terms. Independent authority, direct reporting line, no symbolic title. When I told my father, he didn't try to negotiate or advise. He nodded. "You've earned it." Days passed. The house felt different, quieter, but not tense. Samir stopped competing in subtle ways. Instead, he asked questions about my compliance model, genuinely interested. And then, at my father's final small farewell lunch with close colleagues, someone asked him what he considered his greatest achievement. He paused, not briefly, deliberately. "My daughter." He said clearly, no hesitation, no qualifier. In that moment, I understood something profound. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it stands tall and lets the world adjust its vision. I was never not worth mentioning. I was simply waiting for the right moment to be seen.